Society of Human Genetics, and H3 Africa. I hope you've had an interesting past couple of days, and we really welcome you to the day today. My name is Julie Makani, and I am from Tanzania. Currently, I'm in South Africa, Johannesburg, and I will be chairing this session with Professor Christian Happy from Nigeria. So, with that, I would like to welcome the first speaker. Welcome, Dr. Siana.
Warm greetings from Tanzania. My name is Dr. Siana Nkya. I am the president of the Tanzania Human Genetics Organization. Guest of honor, Honorable Minister of Health, Social Welfare, Elderly, Gender and Children in Zanzibar, representative of the Honorable former President Dr. Jakaya Mrisho Kikwete, Honorable Ambassador Togolani Mavura, the African Society of Human Genetics Board, Human Heredity and Health in Africa, H3 Africa, Tanzania Human Genetics Organization Board, our beloved sponsors, including 54 Gene in Kaba and Illumina, the organizing committee of the 13th Conference of the African Society of Human Genetics and the 18th of the H3 Africa, beloved participants in Tanzania, I would first to the organizing committee for giving me this opportunity in this important event to our country Tanzania, Africa, and the international communities. Since its inauguration in 2003, the African Society of Human Genetics has cultivated a culture of conducting annual conferences each year in alternative African countries. The overall aim of these meetings have been to strengthen human genetics activities in these respective countries and to bring together scientists across Africa in order to share expertise, experience, skills, and knowledge, as well as building meaningful networks. This year's conference is organized by the Tanzania Human Genetics Organization as the local host, the African Society of Human Genetics, and the Human Heredity and Health in Africa, H3 Africa. The Tanzania Human Genetics Organization was founded in 2017, launched in 2019, and formally registered in 2021, with the overall mission of coordinating and enhancing human genetics research, services, and related activities in the community in order to generate knowledge and recommendations for the prevention, diagnosis, and treatment of genetic diseases, as well as promoting health in Tanzania. Since the conception of the society, we had a dream of hosting the annual African Society of Human Genetics meeting in our country for the first time in the history of our nation. We knew that hosting this event will be a catalyst of the ongoing efforts of enhancing human genetics activities in the country. On behalf of the Tanzania Human Genetics Organization, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the African Society of Human Genetics Board, being led by Professor Ambrose Wonkam, for giving us and our country a chance to make history in the book of human genetics journey in Africa. The experience of organizing this event, initially as a physical meeting and then visual, has given us a chance to grow significantly and to learn from all of you. We know that this year's conference is different since we are not able to interact in person. We in Tanzania really looked forward to have received all of you in our country and share with you the warmth of the people of Tanzania. Living in the world of COVID-19 is teaching us new ways of overcoming the norm, as we are forced to adapt to new ways of living, including the way we conduct our meetings. We are fortunate for the technological advancements that are still allowing us to continue pursuing our dreams, including networking and knowledge sharing. I am confident that we can still use the available technologies, such as the one we have for this meeting, to still learn from one another and build the meaningful networks that we wanted. Tanzania was identified as an ideal place to host discussions of genetics of African populations, as East Africa is believed to harbor diversity on the continent. We hope that through this meeting, we will learn about the increasing engagement of modern genomic technologies in an African context, with explicit discussions of how it can be translated to the clinic in the present or near future. We all know that Africa is still research, diagnosis, training, and advocacy, and on how all of this can be applied to improve the health of the people of Africa. Is genomics and translational research to improve health in Africa. The talks and sessions of this meeting are planned to discuss, including but not limited to, genomic medicine, pharmacogenomics, bioinformatics, and DNA diagnostics for both common and rare genetic disorders. Although hurdles exist in incorporating such topics into clinical care in Africa, having these dialogues will lead to incorporating the use of genetic information as it becomes more cost-effective. In addition, with the rapidly decreasing costs of whole exome and whole genome sequencing, research in Africa can be at the forefront of finding new variants that play a role in risk of disease, given the diversity of population structure in the continent. We hope that this conference will be a catalyst in pushing the human genetics agenda in Africa and to ensure that Africa, just as other developed continents, realize the benefits of genomics translation in improving the health of the people of Africa. We believe that genomics in Africa will impact in diagnosing and quick diagnosis of rare and common diseases, will inform us on how diseases are distributed across the continent, will give us knowledge on how differently disease one person to another, as well as how people respond to treatment, are known to contribute greatly in improving the health of the people, as with the agenda of precision well-personalized medicine. We fruitful conference, and I hope that by the end of this conference, each one of us would have learned something new, as well as make new connections. I welcome you to this.
Thank you very much, Dr. Siana. I didn't introduce Dr. Siana properly. Dr. Siana is the president of the Tanzania Society of Human Genetics. She and Mohammed Zahir, who is also on one of the organizers, co-founded the Tanzania Society of Human Genetics. And this is after they met at a meeting, at the last meeting of the African Society of Human Genetics. So when they started discussing setting up the Tanzania Society, one of the things that I kind of cautioned them about was how important it was for them to continue with their scientific careers, as well as participating in activities in organizing meetings. And I have to mention a few of the achievements that Dr. Siana and Mohammed Zahir and their colleagues have been able to do. Siana has been able to get a K43 NIH award. She has also been able to very recently received a grant from Novartis to look at hydroxyurea and precision medicine. Dr. Mohammed Zahir and colleagues organized the first gene editing workshop on sickle cell disease that was held in June 2020 last year. and he's also working on looking at hematopoietic stem cells, and he's looking for funding, and we're very optimistic that we've been able to receive some initial funding so that we can start preparing Tanzania and other countries such as Uganda to participate in gene therapy trials. And this they have been able to do whilst they've been setting up the Tanzania Society of Human Genetics, organizing this meeting, setting up a partnership with 54 Gene, and with led by Professor Deus Ishengoma, and really being at the forefront of pushing all the areas that we are all very passionate about. So much, and many congratulations from Dr. Siana Inke, to Dr. Siana Inke and Mohamed Zahir, as well as the Tanzania Society of Human Genetics. I think now I would like to welcome Professor Ambrose Womkam. He has, because he is absolutely amazing, he has been able to, he is currently the president of the African Society of Human Genetics, as well as being the chair of the principal investigators and steering committee of H3 Africa, as well as being PI on several projects, including the Sickle Pan-African Data Coordinating Center, SADC, which is part of Sickle in Africa. So with all those very few hats that I've mentioned, and Ambrose has a lot more, I'd like to welcome Professor Ambrose Womkam to say a few words. Welcome, Ambrose.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sister Julie, for the kind introduction, and my gratitude to Siana and to Mohammed to take the lead to organize this meeting in Tanzania. We know by experience that this is not you have done so well despite the challenges of moving the meeting from a face-to-face to an online platform. What Julie haven't said is that actually Siana is a mentee of Julie. I can say for a fact because I was, which also means the continent and on a very efficient way. My name is Ambrose Womkam. I'm a medical geneticist by training. I'm genetically from Cameroon, professionally from Cape Town. I'm professor of human genetics at the University of Cape Town. I will be speaking on behalf of the colleague of the African Society of Human Genetics and to some extent of H3 Africa Consortium. The African Society officially started in 2003, but actually in 2001. The first inaugural meeting happened in Washington under the leadership of Professor Charles Rotimi. It is the place to thank him because it's the proof that brain drain do not drain forever, but they can actually circulate. And coming back on Africa was in 2003 in Ghana. And since then, the society have organized meetings in numerous countries in Africa, and every single time we land in a specific place, we take the opportunity to enhance the development of human genetics through the creation of society. That's the way the Cameroonian Society was created, the Malian Society, and today the Rwandan Society, the Senegalese Society of Human Genetics, and the Tanzanian Society. And we will be having our next meeting next year or the 18 months from now in Morocco, the Moroccan Society of Human Genetics. So clearly the society has been a strong vehicle for networking and to connect Africa with themselves and using genetics as a vehicle for health and for research within Africa. For this specific meeting, we have nearly 400 people that registered. We had about 49 fellows that applied to present, and 22 of them were selected for formal presentation. The registrant came from 38 countries and many countries out of Africa, including China, Australia, New Zealand, and from countries in Europe and in America. So we are very proud to continue using our convening power as a society to link Africa to the global world for human genetics. It is the time to acknowledge our partner, the Tanzanian Society, as the local host, and the H3 Africa Consortium our partner, traditional partner like Inkaba, the new one like 54 Genes, our founder partner, the NIH that have been supporting our meeting for a very long time, and the Wellcome Trust, and also the newcoming in the partnership with us from the editorial houses, the Lancet House, specifically the Lancet Hematology, with the session that will start very soon, Nature Genetics, with whom we want our young fellow of the meeting today. So I'm very grateful for all the attendees today, and we hope you will have a fruitful meeting in the next 3 days. Thank you very much. Julie, over to you.
Thank you very much, Ambrose. So I was just sending a message to Chris, and he says he's in the meeting room. So I am delighted to introduce and to welcome Professor Christian Happy. As Ambrose has said, Professor Christian Happy introduced himself. Christian Happy is genetically from Cameroon and professionally in Nigeria. He is immediate past chair of the PI steering committee meeting or committee of H3 Africa. He is a global leader in genomics, particularly pathogen genomics. And it's a pleasure to welcome Professor Christian Happy to speak on behalf of H3 Africa. Welcome, Chris. No problem. So one of the things, whilst we're waiting for Chris, let's see if I can bring up his, read his, the work that he's done. So Christian, yeah, I have it here. Just give me, let me know when he's here. So Christian Happy trained in Harvard, and he's professor of molecular biology and genomics, and the director of the World Bank funded African Center of Excellence for Genomics and Infectious Disease. It's known as AfSHG. This is based at Redeemers University in Nigeria. His main focus of research is in genomics of infectious disease, and he has contributed significantly to what is known and available today as the circulating variants, pathogenesis, and rapid diagnosis of Lassa fever and other emerging infectious diseases in Africa. He and colleagues in groups, if not the first group in Africa, the genome, the virals last year. We, and when I say we, this is H3 Africa, Sickle in Africa, held a workshop in, and this was virtually just at the beginning of the COVID pandemic. And I think Jen Troyer and others from NHGRI at the NIH will remember the kind of shock that we had when we had our first COVID-19 meeting hacked, and we had to postpone that Zoom workshop and have it. And Chris, Ambrose, Lucho Luzato, as well as Biri and Mariam spoke at this meeting, and it's available on the Sickle in Africa YouTube channel that's run by Dr. Vicky Nembawara. So Chris is a member of the Royal Society of Tropical Medicine in the UK. He's also a member of the African Academy of Science, and he's a senior associate member of the Broad Institute of both Harvard and MIT, and he's a visiting professor at Harvard University in the US. So Chris, I was just singing your praises. Welcome.
Thank you, Julie. Sorry for this technical glitch. Again, Julie, is always a privilege and to be introduced by someone like you. As I said, you shoe such a big shoe, and then the impact you're making in Tanzania, and especially has always been, you know, I'm this person that I always tell all the young female African scientists that I have a sister somewhere in Tanzania, and then she should be that inspiring figure for many of you. So it's a real pleasure to be here and then see how you're driving the Tanzania Society of Human Genetics. And then I need to seek the permission of Ambrose, my brother Ambrose, to present, on behalf of H3 Africa, because I ceased to be the chair of the steering committee about a few days ago, and Ambrose is the one on the driving seat. I think with his permission, me, then I can go on and then give this welcome address. I guess the way the program was designed, it was still thought that I was going to be the chair at this moment. I think if Ambrose give me the permission, then I can go ahead and then do that. So that, on his behalf and on behalf of H3 Africa. Ambrose,
go ahead.
Okay,
go ahead.
Thank you very much.
Ambrose, please switch your microphone, your camera on. Thank you, Ambrose.
Okay, so I think with the permission of the chair of the steering committee, the present chair, I think with existing protocol, Ambrose has given me the permission to present on behalf of H3 Africa and on his behalf in this case, because he's actually the present chair of the committee. And then let me get on and then share the screen. Okay, so if I could go on and then share the screen, let me just see what pops up here. I don't know what is being seen here, because this is the screen I want you guys to see. I think it's now. Okay, slideshow. So again, I want to thank everyone for the organization, and I want to welcome everyone at this meeting. And then I will come to the Ambrose and then present. As you know, this is the 18th, this meeting of the African Society of Human Genetics and the Tanzania Society of Human Genetics is a joint meeting with the 18 H3 Africa Consortium meeting. And it is a fourth joint meeting between H3 Africa and then fourth joint meeting between H3 Africa and the African Society of Human Genetics. The first was in Johannesburg in 2013. Then we had one in Dakar 2016 and then one in Kigali. So we could not do one, last year because of the present pandemic situation, and then Julia alluded to it. So, and then we had to postpone. And thankfully, at least there's some progress, at least we can still do it virtually. I would thank God we're all here to witness this great occasion. And then the great organization put in place by H3 Africa and then the Tanzania Society of Human Genetics. And I really want to congratulate all of the organizers, Sienna, Julie, and many others that I don't know the name, but who have made this happen. And we're really proud of the fact that, this society, in Tanzania, is really making great stride as part of sickle cell and many other research that I'm aware of. So, and for H3 Africa, we're in the 9th year of this program. And we started in 2012 in Addis Ababa. We still have a year to go. And then H3 Africa as a consortium has really helped a lot and has delivered a lot on the continent. I want to use this opportunity to thank, funders, everybody that has contributed to H3 Africa. I can't name everybody here, but I will just go on and then thank the funders, that is NIH, NAGRI, the African Academy of Science, Wellcome Trust, and then other funders. And then the array of special guests, that have spoken, at the beginning of the meeting and that have spoken in the previous meeting, and that will be speaking also in the next few days of this meeting. Also, I want to use the opportunity to thank the external the IEC, and then that is chaired by Barry Bloom and then Kay Davis, for all the support that they've given, the H3 Africa Consortium. I will also want to seize the opportunity to thank Professor King Abayomi, who is the chair of the DBAC, and all the PIs and then the fellows and then the administrators, the program managers of all the projects, as well as, the coordinating center led by Michelle Skelton for the incredible work that they've done over the years in order to support, the H3 Africa Consortium and made it what it is today. So to give some highlights, of the 18, H3 Africa meeting consortium. So I think in the past week, the working groups were on, and then they actually came the first day and then gave us some report back. And that was very interesting to hear from the various group, the various working group reporting. And we also had like guest speakers from, we had Professor Rick Chisholm, talking to us. And then we have a speaker from the HPRC, from WHO, and then also from HCA and then CORID. So we had an array of speakers speaking in the past few days. We also heard a lot of great research from the PIs and the fellows, and that really, I was very thrilled to see exactly what has been made since the beginning of H3 Africa and now, because we could see many fellows really speaking boldly and very eloquently about what the kind of work that they've done. And there was a very interesting session, very interesting session about, where we listened to early career scientists, and really, looked up to the 5 top achievers, that were able to deliver about 10 plenary speeches. And then also we had 20 speed presentation in the meeting. On the 2nd of September, which is today, then we have this joint, meeting with H3 Africa and then the Africa Study of Human Genetics. And what I want to really mention here, the Lancet Hematology, sickle cell disease in Africa launch, so which really makes, again, this day very unique in many ways. And then many themes in the sessions of today will include H3 Africa PIs, as you see, between H3 Africa and the Africa Society is intermingled, because most PIs in the two societies, or the two consortia, are pretty much working hand in hand. And really today, going along, we also have a lot of the networking, social event and exhibitions, and then also COVID-19 memorials. So I think to just present some H3 Africa progress at glance is, you could see it here. For instance, you could see that, within, in terms of membership, you could see that, the membership of the society has grown, grown a lot. It went between 2018 to 2019, it actually grew about threefold. In terms of trainees, it was almost twofold increase, and then training support, more than twofold increase. In terms of publication, so we almost, threefold increase in terms of publication, and that's very impressive to see. And most of these publications are African-led. Now, what is very super impressive here is the fact that the number of participants recruited in the H3 Africa program, in the H3 Africa Consortium research, we went from 50,000, in 2018 to double these numbers in 3 years, from 50,000 to 100,000. That is impressive. And this really actually paved the way for sustainability for this consortium. And then here we are in terms of thinking about how we can basically sustain this. And then the consortium has knowledge and then solution. We're going to see that in the next few slides. For instance, in terms of participants, as we mentioned, we had over 100,000, but this was anticipated. We anticipated to do 112,000, but we still have a year left, and we're already at 107,000. Most likely, we're going to be above this number as it has happened. So in terms of the Africa array, it was anticipated we're going to use about 26,000, but we're actually way above it, over 30,000 arrays used. And you can see here, and even in terms of NGS targeted, so it wasn't anticipated to do within the consortium over 400. And more impressive is actually the fact that there are over 15,000 RNA-seq, and none of these were, this was not anticipated originally. So, and then in terms of a real asset, I think Africa has a unique asset, because we have like 8 studies now and over that have generated over 20 data set, and then we have in our biorepositories, over 23,000, biospecimens. And these biorepositories actually represent, I think, the way for the future studies in Africa, and they really want here to really acknowledge, Alashley with our repository in the Institute of Human Biology in Nigeria. Then we have the IBR H3AU in University of Macquarie, and then CLS, University of Witwatersrand. So these are biorepositories that actually holding up a lot of useful, and then a great specimen that could be very important for research, on the continent. I also want to highlight a few contributors significant is biospecimens. And that really is important to mention here. We have the topanogen, and then we have the Siren study, we have H3 Africa chip, and then the CAFGen and AWIGen by Michelle, and then that's really have been tremendous in terms of making this information and then the data available, and then maybe that will be useful in the future. So, and then there are many other studies in the pipeline and then cross-consultation, and a few of them are in the repeats studies, and then these are studies that are already using the existing sequence data that are already available. But then there are also some other studies that will be probably will be coming on along, and these are the transcriptome and the blood trait. For this study, they will need to generate additional data phenotype, and then also once we have this, then access can be people can have access. But then there are also studies that are very specific to disease, like rare disease and oral infectious disease and many other diseases across the continent. You study that admixtures and then kind of selection across different population across Africa. So, and this really to achieve this, there's a need actually to look at, to generate additional data or more data, harmonize the way this data, harmonize this data and then also make access. But as you take all of these things together, actually show that there is opportunity here for not only research in the future, but there's also opportunity for training, then visibility, and then also sustainability. And that I think it's really important at this point to actually mention a few of the things that actually made Africa, and H3 Africa has made a huge slash, what I call slash in the field of genomics and in the field of science. And we cannot talk about H3 Africa without talking about this major paper, and it's this major market paper that occurred, that was published last year, whereby we had, and this paper published in Nature actually provided one of the most, extensive studies ever done in the African population. And that really uncovered millions of new genetic variants, and that really provides a better and a new insight into the diversity and the history of the African continent and its people. I think H3 Africa, through the consortium, has brought Africa science to a new level. And really, we're very glad, that this has really changed the paradigm and then changed the dynamic. Then in the field of, infectious disease, so here I am receiving this award, but this was really built around the fact economics, to put Africa on the map and then to guide the public health response to COVID in a way that was unanticipated in the past. Remember that we actually generated the first SARS-CoV-2 in Africa, hours of receiving the sample, and then the group in South Africa and many other places in the continent identified new variants way before others could do, and that's really guiding Africa and then using this data for public health response in a way that was unprecedented. So really going on, I think H3 Africa has made great interest. And then one thing that I want to mention here, and actually to show that, H3 Africa has transformed, what I call the youth of Africa. This is a case of Segun Fatima. And this is a real story that should be inspiring many young people across the continent. This is a young man that was assigned, and through the H3 Africa platform has become one of the greatest genome scientists in the world. And we believe that, such stories should be more inspiring for the young generation coming up and realize that and show people that it's possible given the platform. I really want to use the opportunity to thank Michelle Ramsey for the leadership that she's and then leading this great innovation in the field of human genomics. Again, saying thank you, Ambrose. As Julie mentioned, we are all from the same genetic background. We're coming from the same, and I'm just to hand over to him. There's no other better person than to hand over the H3 Africa Consortium. Knowing how much Ambrose is passionate about H3 Africa and the African Society of Human Genetics, at least I cannot just but be so proud and glad of the fact that now we have all of these two entities in the hands of a hero, and then in the hand of somebody that believes so much in Africa and in its potential. And Ambrose, I am very sure, as he has demonstrated always in the past, that he's capable of, leading us to a new level, and as far as the African Society and H3 Africa is concerned. So on this note, I really want to thank you. And then again, for those who weren't there, during the H3 Africa steering meeting start, I want to really welcome Ambrose as the new chair of the H3 Africa Consortium, and Ambrose will be assisted in this task with Zane Lombardi, who was voted in as a co-chair. And Ambrose, again, I am so proud and glad to hand over the baton to you. And I know very well that you're going to take it, to a different level because you have more capacity than many of us, do have. Again, thank you to everyone for this meeting. And then I'm very sure that in the next few days, we're going to be having a meeting ahead of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. That was fantastic. Really, really a lot of congratulations to H3 Africa. What has been achieved over the past 11 years is absolutely extraordinary. And so congratulations to everyone. And thank you to the funders, NIH Wellcome Trust, as well as the other funders that are funding indirectly, the scientists, as well as the infrastructure of the investigators in Africa. So thank you very, very much. And now we'll go back to the Tanzania Society of Human Genetics. And I would like to welcome Dr. Siana Nkya or Mohammed Zahir to welcome the dignitaries from the government officials who have honored us to be part of this. Whilst we're waiting for the Tanzania Society of Human Genetics to start the introductions, I just want to say a special thank you to Ambassador Togolani Mavura. He has been really supportive of the setup and the establishment of the Tanzania Society of Human Genetics, as well as the Ali Kimara Foundation for Rare Disease. And it really makes a big difference having high level support, high level advocacy from yourself, Ambassador Togolani. Ambassador Togolani worked for the previous president of the United Republic of Tanzania, President Jakaya Kikwete, and he has been really instrumental in supporting and getting support to the Tanzania Society of Human Genetics. Are we ready, Tanzania Society? Thank you. Welcome.
Yes, thank you.
Welcome.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Welcome. Yes, thank you. Welcome. Yes. It's okay. We're sorting out the sound. Maybe whilst we're waiting, this might be a good time to really thank the authorities in Tanzania, because they have been extremely supportive. The setup of human genetics, from the setup of genomic research in Tanzania, the setup of the Tanzania Society of Human Genetics, really trying to look at the establishment of capacity, both for human genetics as well as pathogen genetics. And this is from the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Education, Science and Technology. And also when we have been trying to organize high-level meetings, whether this is at the World Bank or at the UN General Assembly, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has also been extremely, extremely supportive. And then beyond that, as I've mentioned with Ambassador Togolani, we have also had high-level support from the Office of the President and the Office of the Vice President. So this is from President Kikwete, President Magufuli, and now President Samia, who, when she was the Vice President of Tanzania, attended it was last year. She was a guest of honor at the Rare Disease Day. So we really have been lucky in Tanzania in getting high-level advocacy and high-level support. Siana, Dr. Siana, are you ready?
Yes, Prof. So thank you so much. Good afternoon again from Tanzania. Warm greetings. Just to say that we in Tanzania also had a local hub where we have about 60 or 50 people together. And we are very grateful to have with us our guest of honor, the Minister of Health, Social Welfare, Gender, Elderly, and Children. I hope I've made the order correctly with us. And we really thank him for the support that he has shown to us to be joining us not just visually but in person in Dar es Salaam. We also have with us Honorable Ambassador Togolani Mavura, who is representing the former President Jakaya Mrisho Kikwete. With these words, I would first like to welcome the speech from the former President Jakaya Mrisho Kikwete, which will be followed by the speech from the guest of honor. Thank you.
Standing here on behalf of His Excellency Dr. Jakaya Mrisho Kikwete, former President of the United Republic of Tanzania and a formidable champion of human genomics. President Kikwete wished to address this conference in person. However, due to exigencies of office, he could not do so this time. He is outside the country and asked me to stand on his behalf and deliver his short remarks as follows. So, Honorable Nasor Mazrui, Minister of Health, Social Welfare, Elderly, Gender and Children from Zanzibar, the Board of the African Society of Human Genetics, Human Heredity and Health in Africa, Madam President, Tanzania Society for Human Genetics, and the board, the organizing committee, beloved participants in Tanzania, Africa, and globally, ladies and gentlemen. I'm grateful to the Tanzania Society of Human Genetics, the African Society of Human Genetics, and the Human Heredity for Africa for organizing this important conference and inviting me to take part. I would like to take this opportunity to welcome all participants around the globe who have dedicated their time to take part in this historic meeting. It is unfortunate that we could not meet physically as it is accustomed due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. We hope that this situation will get back normal very soon and we shall be happy and free to meet and interact physically. Our country and many others in Africa still experience a great burden of both communicable and non-communicable diseases, which also impact the socio-economic development of individual countries and the entire continent. We now also understand that genetic patterns plays a great role in defining disease, prevalence, distribution, vulnerability, progression, and treatment outcomes. We also know that the African continent is still lagging behind in terms of human genetics research and development of DNA diagnostic despite the high genetic diversity posed by the people of this continent. We understand that building the genetics capacity in Africa will not only impact the Africans, but the whole world, because all other human races are believed to have come out of Africa. Looking at the theme of this conference, genomics and translational research to improve health in Africa, and the coverage of different topics, I'm confident that you'll have a great discussions and deliberations which will be fruitful. It is my sincere hope that this conference will result into long-term future networks and partnerships that will impact the health of the Africans. I wish you all the best and fruitful deliberations. Thank you.
I'm Nasor Ahmed Mazrui, Minister for Health, Social Welfare, Elders, Gender and Children, Zanzibar. I'm delighted to participate on this 13th Conference of African Society of Human Genetics. This is very important event which brings 300 diverse participants from both AfSHG and the H3 Africa. The theme of this conference is very interesting. The theme is genomics and translation research to improve health in Africa. This conference will be discussing on the concepts, challenges, opportunities, and the development in African genetics. Tanzania and many other African countries are working hard with controllable infectious disease with enormous toll on lives of our people and social economical development of individual people, countries, and entire continent. Increased trend of non-communicable disease is overwhelming. To fight this disease and the challenges they impose on our communities, it is critical and urgent in innovative methods, including those focusing in areas such as basic and applied science, research, services, delivery, and technological advancement. As a government, we shall take a lead to strengthen local capacity for research and development towards discovery, optimization, deployment of effective interventions. Our government will fully support NICS to make that difference very successfully. We are greatly honored and privileged to meet with scientists and researchers from African continent to exchange views and ideas which will bring ways and means to combat our challenges facing health sectors. Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed, and I wish you all the best on this important event.
Thank you very, very much, Honorable Minister of Health in Zanzibar, Tanzania. Thank you very much for that. We have, it is now 1 o'clock, and we are actually running ahead of time. So I will take this time to do a couple of things. The first is to mention 3 things that I feel are worth mentioning. And one is really to recognize the role that Professor Bongani Mayosi had in H3 Africa, the African Society of Human Genetics, and really supporting the development of excellence in science and scientists in Africa. Professor Bongani Mayosi passed away, and a lot of the work and the ethos that is driving H3 Africa is really something that he really believed in, and really want us to spend a minute just recognizing the role that Bongani Mayosi had in this work that we are all doing. Next, I'd really would like to thank again the guest of honors from Tanzania, Ambassador Togolani, on behalf of President Jakaya Mrisho Kikwete, and the Honorable Minister of Health from Zanzibar, part of the United Republic of Tanzania. Really want to thank you, because your presence here has really made a difference and will make a difference to Tanzania in terms of making people, both the community as well as the leadership, recognize the value of human genetics, recognize the value of health research, and recognize the importance of the work that is being done in Tanzania and in Africa. So thank you very, very much for your presence and for your support. Before I hand over the chairmanship or the chair of this session to Chris Happy, I really want to emphasize the Pan-African nature of H3 Africa. You've heard Ambrose and Chris talk about how they are originally from Cameroon, but Ambrose is working in South Africa, and Chris is working in Nigeria. I also would like to recognize the presence of Dr. Furaini Tuluai, who was very, very instrumental in setting up Sickle in Africa, the Sickle Pan-African Research Consortium in Tanzania. She is now based in South Africa, working with Professor Michelle Ramsey at University of Wits in Johannesburg. And this really are examples of how, as H3 Africa, we are really encouraging and we're really supporting the circulation of excellence and experience and expertise within Africa. And this is just very, very much commendable for H3 Africa. With regards to the Wellcome Trust as one of the funders, you've heard with the funding from the NIH with Jen Troyer. The Wellcome Trust is another funder of H3 Africa. And I don't know if Audrey is on the line, but I really want to recognize the contribution of the Wellcome Trust for H3 Africa, and also for the work that we have done in Tanzania, setting up the sickle cell program in Tanzania has really been made possible by the funding that we received from the Wellcome Trust for over 10 years. So thank you very much, Wellcome Trust. For now, I will ask Ambrose, Chris, and to say a few words, and then I will ask Chris to take over the chair of this session to introduce Dr. Yaiza Del Pozo Martin, who is the editor of Lancet Hematology, so that we can start the next session, which is the launch of the hematology series on hematology in Africa. Welcome, Chris, to take over the chair and then to hand over to Yaiza. Thank you. Unless Dr. Siana, Ambrose, is there anything else that you'd like to say?
Not really, Julie, from my end. I think we can proceed as you said before.
Okay. Chris, I'm happy to hand over to you. Thank you. Chris? Oh, sorry. Siana, did you want to say something? Dr. Siana Karibu. Siana, did you want to say something?
Anything from us as well. Thank you so much.
Did you want to say something?
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Back to you, Chris.
Thank you, Julie. Again, it's a unique pleasure to be here and then to chair. And I want to believe that we are co-chairing this session together. And I think, after the speech we heard from the officials of the Federal Republic of United Republic of Tanzania, we could see exactly that the Tanzania Society of Human Genetics is highly supported by the government, and that's what we want to see all over Africa. Again, I want to thank Julie for leading this, and also thank Ambrose for his presence here, and Sienna for being in the background. So I think we can go on with the launching of the Lancet Hematology series, and priorities in the hematological care, in sub-Saharan Africa. I think we will start up with an overview, from the series lead, and then this should be by Professor Julie Makani. I think Julie needs no introduction here in this space. And I don't think that, in the interest of time, I think, Julie, I think you got 10 minutes to provide this overview of the series. And I guess after you, then we can continue. If I'm not mistaken, that should be the order. Over to you, Julie.
Thank you very much, Chris. So sorry about this. You're absolutely right. The co-chair for this session will be Yaiza, who is the editor of the Lancet Hematology, and yourself, Chris. And Yaiza, please take it from here. Thank you.
And some of the speakers have not joined yet, so we were considering whether we could do a small break, if that would be okay, and then try to make this, because we could start with your presentation, Julie, but that would mean that some other speakers are not joined yet. So if that would be okay.
You're absolutely right. I think you're absolutely right, Dr. Yaiza. I think just because we do have some people who are going to join at 2:00, which is 10 minutes from now. So what we can do, there are a couple of options that we can take, but I'm very keen that we wait and start at 2:00 just to allow other people to join. So Vicky or Ambrose or Chris, I know that there are quite a lot of resources that we have in H3 Africa with regards to videos or links. Is that something that we can put up? Alternatively, the Tanzania Society of Human Genetics, this is an opportunity if you want to say anything or if you want to comment, please do so. So I do agree with you guys that we should take a break and then come back at the hour.
And another option, Julie, if you may, is to give more time for presentations within the Lancet Hematology series. My worry is that if we give now 40 minutes, we might lose some of the attendees. I don't know what
That sounds good to me. I mean, if some of you can prolong the presentation a bit longer, that would work. And then we could shuffle around the orders so that we make sure some of the presenters are there towards the end. So as you prefer, should we hold the session then for a small break for say 10 minutes and then reconvene?
Yeah, that will work then. So we can say we start at half past what?
The hour.
10 minutes time.
Okay, that sounds good. So
That's
we'll
great.
start at half past the hour, wherever
Julie,
you are.
I would suggest, Julie, I know that you got a few things, in your presentation. If you could tweak a little bit in the next few minutes, to add a few things that could, inspire. I keep saying you, the role model, just a lot of these young looking up to you. If you could just tweak it and then add a little bit the way you know to do it, that would be great.
Okay, I'll try and do that. Thank you very much, Chris. Very kind of you.
Thank you.
So we'll be back in 10 minutes or at 30 minutes past the hour. Thank you. Hi, yeah, Isaac. Or Chris, is there a difference? Can you hear me well now, or is this better?
No, we can hear you very well. I
Yeah.
can hear
Okay,
you.
great.
Either
Thank
voice.
you.
Okay. We are happy to start. So if we can now remove the slide. I think we are still waiting for Professor Oren to join. Now we will swap around the presentations today. Okay, shall we start then? Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you might be joining this free session from. Ahead of time, but we will be making the recording of the session available afterwards, and some of you are also joining us via YouTube to make this session free to access for you. So thank you for joining us today for the launch of the Lancet Hematology series on priorities in hematological care in Sub-Saharan Africa. I'm Dr. Yaiza del Pozo Martin, Acting Editor-in-Chief of the Lancet Hematology, and I'm joined today by 5 wall experts who contributed to this series. This project was initiated by the journal with me as lead editor, and we were really lucky to come with the expert guidance of Professor Julie Makani from Muhimbili University of Health and Allied Sciences from Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, who advised us on the topics and the experts that finally made this series. Professor Makani also contributed with a comment providing an overview of this series that you can now access online at thelancet.com, and she will be giving the first talk today. Before I hand over to Julie, please note that we will have time for questions at the end. So please do submit your questions on the little Q&A live chatbot that we have here on the screen. Also, I would like to remind speakers of time, but since we are ahead of a schedule, please do prolong your talk a little bit while we wait for the other speakers. And with this, and without further delay, I would like to hand over to Julie for her presentation. Thank you, Professor Makani.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yaiza. Sorry, just if you give me time. Yes, may I ask if you could just introduce the other speakers? I don't know if you have the biographies of the other speakers whilst I sort out my presentation. Thank you.
The lead for this series, and she helped us to envision, and she helped us to recruit also all the experts that have participated in the series. So with us today, we have Dr. Martin Wangi from the School of Public Health and Family Medicine from the University of Malawi. He's an expert in iron deficiency anemia, and that he will be covering today in his talk with a call to action for change in Sub-Saharan Africa. As Professor Ambroise Bourquin, who has been already with us in the session earlier today, Department of Medicine, University of Cape Town, South Africa, and he will be telling us about transferable strategies for the prevention and care of sickle cell disease. We are also having a talk today by Professor Jackson Oren from the Uganda Cancer Institute in Kampala, Uganda, and he will be covering endemic hematologic malignancies in Sub-Saharan Africa and telling us about the East African cooperative model, who could be taken as an exemplar to improve care in the region. And finally, we will have with us Dr. Yvonne Day Adomako from the Department of Hematology, University of Ghana Medical School, Accra, Ghana. Dr. Day Adomako will us about the challenges and opportunities for safer blood supply in sub-Saharan Africa. And this is the list of great speakers we have today. And just to let everyone know that also all the papers will be available at thelancet.com from 2 p.m. today, Central African time. So you can access all the extended work of the authors there. Looking forward to the presentations. Julie, are you ready now? Oh, I think you're muted. Oh, there you go.
Great. Thank you very much, Dr. Yaiza. So I had the real honor of working with Yaiza on the series on hematology in Africa. So we had a lot of discussion as to how we should structure it and how we can try and identify the priorities of hematology, particularly hematology care in sub-Saharan Africa. So I am obviously very, very biased because I work in hematology and I've been working in hematology for the past 16, 18 years. And when I was thinking about writing the commentary, which I had the honor of working with Dr. Grace Moshi, Professor Grace Moshi, who is a proper hematologist, Tanzanian born, and has had a lot of work and experience working in Tanzania, South Africa, Australia, and is currently working in Singapore. She is also the adjunct faculty at Mobile University and helping us set up the laboratory and the clinical infrastructure for gene therapy. So when we were thinking about the commentary that we wrote for this series, I thought about what is hematology. And I have these three quotes that I got. If any of you are fans of the book or the film, Bram Stoker's Dracula, Dracula said, "Blood is life," and that is something that we, working in the field of hematology, very much believe that. From the Bible, that for the life of the flesh is in the blood, really emphasizing that blood is the basis of that. And then William Harvey, who is probably known or considered to be the one of the main fathers of modern hematology or hematology and blood transfusion, said this. And so I conclude that blood lives and is nourished of itself and in no way depends on any other part of the body as being prior to it or more excellent. So that from this we may perceive the causes not only of life in general, but also of longer or shorter life, of sleeping and waking, of skill, of strength, and so forth. This, I think, is really, when you start really looking at each of these statements or each of these words, I think it really says a lot about hematology and blood in terms of this, when you look at hematopoietic stem cells, when you look at how and why blood is such an important aspect of life and health. So in thinking about hematology and prioritizing what should we talk about in the series of hematology in Africa, hematology is one of those conditions that is everywhere. It can be treated at any level, and it should be treated at any level. And this is where, when you listen to the talk and when you read the series by the review by Dr. Mwangi, Martin Mwangi, who's talking about iron deficiency. Iron deficiency is the most common form of anemia globally. It's very, very common. And the tragedy about iron deficiency is that most of the time, and we'll hear more about this from Dr. Mwangi, it is treatable, whether it's due to infestations from hookworms, which is still occurring in some places in Africa, but more commonly, whether it's due to nutritional anemia, which is identifiable and is treatable. or it's due to other causes that may be more subtle. So when we were thinking about it, when we think about hematology, we were thinking, okay, should we talk about iron deficiency? Should we talk about sickle cell disease? And this figure on the left really outlines the different aspects of hematology. And this is really just selected aspects of hematology, whether you're talking about bone marrow failure syndrome, such as pancytopenia and paroxysmal nocturnal hemoglobinuria, which is an area of expertise of Professor Lucio Luzzatto and Dr. Moshungi Ali, whether you hear from Professor Ambrose Walcom about sickle cell disease, whether we're talking about white blood cell disorders, and here we're talking about hematological disorders or hematological cancers. And Professor Jackson Oram, who runs the university, the Uganda Cancer Institute, will talk about the hematological cancers that they manage in Uganda. And then the most important thing is really blood transfusion. And Dr. Yvonne from Uganda is really one of the first investigators leading the Blood Safe initiative from the NIH, NHLBI, where they are looking to conduct health research in blood transfusion in Africa. Dr. Yvonne from Ghana has led and is leading a group of investigators that are looking at the implementation research questions around blood transfusion. And so we'll hear about this from her presentation, and you'll be able to read about this in her review. So when we think about hematology, whether it's hematology as a discipline in itself, whether it is part of internal medicine in adults or part of pediatrics in children, whether it's a key component of surgery, and we know that it has a major aspects when you look at the top causes of maternal morbidity and mortality. It is maternal anemia, and it is post or peripartum hemorrhage. So blood, I know I'm biased, but blood really is life. So what we also wanted to do as part of this series was to make sure that not only did we not focus just on tertiary healthcare facilities, but we also wanted to make sure that there is, to a certain extent, a continuum of care. And so when you read the series or the 4 articles, you will see how the work that is being done at Uganda Cancer Institute, the work that is being done in centers of excellence in sickle cell disease, the work that is being done in iron deficiency anemia really touches on all the 3 levels of healthcare in terms of healthcare facilities as well as home-based care. So this is what we ended up identifying. And as I said, this is really just the beginning of trying to disentangle all the achievements or highlight all the achievements that have been made in hematology in Africa and identifying the gaps and the opportunities that we can take advantage of. So Grace Moshe and myself wrote the commentary, and then you will hear from Dr. Martin Mwangi, who will talk about iron deficiency anemia, again, referring to what we're talking about, the Pan-African nature of this series, as well as H3 Africa and African Society of Human Genetics. Dr. Martin Mwangi is originally or genetically from Kenya, but he's working in Malawi. And as we speak now, he's actually in transit in Netherlands, going to a meeting. Then blood cancers, and Professor Jackson Oram is the director of the Uganda Cancer Institute, which is really a flagship organization in East Africa, in Africa, that is really identifying and treating cancers, and these are all cancers, and he will talk about their experience in treating hematological cancers in Uganda. You all know Professor Ambrose Walcom. He is a medical geneticist in South Africa, and he and his colleagues have talked about sickle cell disease from the research perspective, the hematological perspective, and it really is a fantastic review that they have done, identifying what are the key areas that we have made progress and what are the key areas that we need to strengthen. Finally, and Professor Wonkum is in the top right-hand corner. Dr. Mwangi is on the top left corner. And then this is an image from the Uganda Cancer Institute. On the right, bottom left corner, right corner, is Dr. Yvonne, who runs the blood transfusion program in Uganda and really is, as I said, the lead and one of the principal investigators of one of the Blood Safe consortia, really making fantastic strides in implementation research around blood transfusion, bearing in mind that there has been extensive strengthening of blood transfusion services across countries in Africa because of ensuring safe blood as part of the prevention of horizontal transmission of HIV. So when we were talking about the series and when we were discussing this with Lancet Hematology and then with the authors, we wanted them to emphasize the fact that we in Africa have taken either directly, indirectly, an integrated approach to hematology in Africa. Priority is really providing and improving the standard of care. So under healthcare, here's an image of exchange blood transfusion for sickle cell disease. This was done manually in Aga Khan Hospital in Tanzania in August with investigators, doctors, Dr. Freddy Luoga and Dr. Mashungi Ali, as well as the patient who received the manual exchange transfusion with the mentorship and supervision online by Professor Lucio Luzato. So training, and here I'll refer to what Chris has mentioned about really at the center of everything that we do is training, education, and improving capacity of the many, many people who have been working and are working in hematology and blood transfusion. And the picture here is an image from a fantastic conference that we had in Tanzania in 2018 called the Advances. It wasn't a conference, it was a course, Advances in Hematology in Africa. And this is a course that, Advances in Hematology is a course that has been running for more than 50 years in London at the Hammersmith Hospital, where both myself, Lucio, and Grace worked there. Obviously, Lucio was the head of the department, and this was at different times. And so when we decided that we would have the course, Advances in Hematology in Africa, it was very daunting, but we were very, very pleased because we were able to have the course in 2018, and we were able to run this course and have really top class speakers attend the course. Fumi Olopade, who is in the middle and who you will hear speaking as part of this conference, Dr. Magdalena Limo, who is now head of the blood transfusion service in Tanzania, Dr. Stella Rezaula, who is the first female hematologist in Tanzania, and Dr. Hadija Mwinula, who is a pediatrician with an expertise in pediatric hematology. Dr. Grace Bosch is on the right-hand side. And so really looking at short-term training, long-term training, and trying to highlight that there has been training that has been ongoing in hematology in Africa. In terms of research, again, throughout the four speakers, you will hear how research has really been at the core of the work that they have been doing in the various disciplines. This is a map that shows the work that Ambrose and I have been doing really with colleagues, amazing colleagues in South Africa, Tanzania, Ghana, Nigeria. With support from the NHLBI and the NIH, we've been able to set up a Pan-African consortium, and we have been able to enroll more than 13,000 individuals with sickle cell disease across different ages, across 3 countries. And this is really the largest cross-sectional enrollment or registry of sickle cell patients in the world. And it's really a pleasure that we do. One of the things that is important for me to mention here is the role that Solomon Ofori-Akwa, who you will hear about, who will be speaking later during the conference in the next couple of days. But when we were writing the grant for SPARCO and SADC, the resources and the experience and expertise from Solomon was absolutely critical in the success that we had in getting the grants. So thank you to Solomon Ofori-Akwa for his input and his support in making Sickle in Africa possible. Advocacy is something that, again, you will hear about, very important, and advocacy is at 3 levels. Here's a photograph of Professor Jackson Oram from the Uganda Cancer Institute from a paper educating the public about the work and the services available at the Institute with healthcare providers and investigators who work at UCI. Working with the community, and here we're talking individuals who have disease, or it's chronic disorder like a cancer, whether it's a chronic lymphocytic leukemia, or whether it's a community of acute illnesses such as iron deficiency anemia. And here we have also communities of blood donors, where we want to make sure that we have long-term blood donors. We have set up a registry of blood donors so that we can strengthen the bone marrow donor registry. And this picture shows Dr. Emmanuel Balandia, who is the principal investigator in Tanzania, with the workshop that he was involved with Arafa Salim and Naima in training and providing education to patients with sickle cell disease in Tanzania. And again, this is work that is echoed across countries in Africa. Finally, in terms of advocacy, high-level engagement, we heard today from the Tanzania Society of Human Genetics, from the Minister of Health of Zanzibar, as well as from the President of Tanzania, the former President of Tanzania, President Kikwete's representative, Ambassador Togolani. And here, again, this was a visit to the NIH that was made possible by Ambassador Togolani, where the President Kikwete, as well as other heads of state, as part of the Africa Summit that was organized by President Barack Obama at that time, visited the NIH and heard about the work that the NIH is doing in Africa and the potential opportunities for partnership. And so this is a picture with the NIH director, Dr. Francis Collins, and the director of NHLBI, Dr. Gary Gibbons, and the director of Fogarty, Dr. Roger Glass. So in terms of education and training, this is something that is important. And here we've just given an example of formal training. This is like a training at academic institutions. So training of doctors, training of laboratory scientists, and training of nurses. And what we wanted to emphasize here is that there is an importance of training for hematology and blood transfusion at all levels, undergraduate, postgraduate, and postdoctoral. But then we recognize also that we also have to strengthen education and training at all levels, primary healthcare and in the different specialties. And again, we have looked at and we have learned from H3 Africa, we've learned from existing models on how we can train hematologists and blood transfusion in all these areas. This is a fantastic slide that you will see in the commentary that from Dr. Grace Moshi, really looking at the importance of partnerships. We are lucky that many countries in Africa have very strong public health systems. The advantage of public health systems is that they exist. The disadvantage is that they need to be strengthened. And so almost all the investigators or all the reviewers that will speak work either with public health institutions or work very, very closely with public health institutions. And so really looking at vaccination programs with hematology care. We can integrate government hematological care in terms of capacity building and capacity, but capacity in terms of looking at manufacturing medicines and vaccines. And here we have examples in Nigeria, examples in Tanzania, and really the fantastic examples with the COVID-19 vaccine in South Africa with regards to manufacturing medicines on the continent for the continent. And then in terms of research, we really emphasized that the focus of the series is hematological care, but it has to be integrated with research in the sense that you can't say, let me just improve healthcare and then I will start doing the research, or the other way around, let me do research and then I will translate my knowledge into improving healthcare. No, we said, and this is approach that we used in sickle cell disease with a paper that's written by Dr. Furaini Tuluai, where she looks at how an integrated approach in sickle cell disease has helped in terms of strengthening research as well as healthcare and training. And then finally, the partnerships that we mentioned before, partnerships at different levels in different ways, and the importance of this in order to ensure sustainability. But finally, really just want to say a bit about science. And I am absolutely fascinated. And if you have time, please look at this short video that is available on the link there. And this was a video where Francois was asked, why is she obsessed, or why is she looking to find a cure for HIV? And this is, I quote, where she said, "We are not making science for science, we're making science for the benefit of humanity. If you are working on human disease, you must have a relationship with people living with the disease." And this is because the patients with HIV went to her and said, you identified the virus. And because of that discovery, she received the Nobel Prize in 2008. They said, you identified the virus. What are you going to do about it? You have to find a cure for this. And I think this is where a lot of the, hang on. And this is where, as an example, and you'll hear a lot about this from the talk by Ambrose, is in hematology in Africa, when we're searching for a cure, whether this is for iron deficiency, anemia, whether this is for sickle cell disease, whether this is for hematological cancers, how are we going to find a cure for some of the hematological disorders? Who's going to do it? Where are we going to do it? When are we going to do it? Is this in the next 3 years, or is it in the next 10 years? What are we going to do? What are we going to prioritize? Are we going to prioritize hemophilia and gene therapy and the fantastic work that is already being done in Cape Town, in Johannesburg by Johnny Mahlangu? Or is it going to be leukemia with work that is being done by Anna Shu and colleagues? How are we going to do this? And as an example, this is a figure that focuses, I'm biased obviously, on sickle cell disease, and in Tanzania, where we started answering those questions around gene therapy for sickle cell disease. We had the Advances in Hematology course in 2018. We had the gene editing workshop in 2020. And we identified 2 hospitals where we can do gene therapy and participate in gene therapy trials. And then in terms of who and how, we have been very, very fortunate with Professor Lucho Luzato being in Tanzania, Marina Kabatsana, who did the first successful transplant in France, visited us and attended the Advances in Hematology course in 2018 with Eliane Gluckman, who's renowned for transplant, and Grace Moshi, who is my co-author for the commentary, and Dr. Siana, who is really fantastic and the president of the Tanzania Society of Human Genetics, as well as being an excellent, excellent scientist. So really trying to look at how we do this, where we do this, when, how we're going to fund this, and working with entities such as H3 Africa, the Global Gene Therapy Initiative, to making this a reality in Africa. So Thank you very much for listening. I think I've taken a long time, but we're very fortunate, touch wood, that we've got enough time. This is Grace and myself at a meeting in 2019 in Rome. This was a meeting that was organized by Elian Gluckman, really looking at how we can make transplant and gene therapy accessible globally. And want to thank individuals, community healthcare providers, researchers, government, industry, NGOs, funders who have really supported us. Sickle in Africa, H3 Africa, H3 Bionet, Sickle Gen Africa are all supported by the US National Institutes of Health. And the Sickle Cell Program in Tanzania received support in the setup by the Wellcome Trust. So thank you very much, everyone, for listening to me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Julie, for this terrific presentation and giving a fantastic overview of the series and of the different authors that have contributed to this project. So I'm really excited now to start also with the rest of the speakers. So first up, we are going to have Dr. Martin Mwangi, from the School of Public Health and Family Medicine, University of Malawi, who will tell us about iron deficiency anemia, as Julie previously introduced. So please, Martin.
Hi, can you hear me? Is it,
yes, we can hear you.
And can you see my screen? Thank you. Thank you, Professor Julie. Thank you, Yaiza. I'm really delighted to join you this afternoon in this meeting to present to you about iron deficiency anemia in sub-Saharan Africa. And this is really a call to action because, as Professor Julie already explained, most of the evidence already on the table. It's now how we translate it to practice. Now, our paper is part of the Lancet Hematology series, Priorities in Hematological Care in Sub-Saharan Africa, which is being launched today. So this is also another exciting moment for us. My name is Martin Mwangi, and I'm a nutritional epidemiologist, senior research fellow based at the Training and Research Unit of Excellence at the College of Medicine in University of Malawi. We wrote this paper with my fellow co-authors as listed, and I'm really presenting on their behalf, and I also want to thank them for working with us on this. We sought to review the causes, burden, and consequences of iron deficiency anemia in the general population of sub-Saharan Africa. And we also sought to review the current policies and interventions for the control of iron deficiency anemia in the general population of sub-Saharan Africa, and then present the evidence and also see where the continent or the region could do better. And so I start by presenting to you the epidemiology of iron deficiency anemia in sub-Saharan Africa. This is based on the most recent data that have been published by the World Health Organization about the region. And to say the least, the anemia prevalence in various population groups, preschool age children, pregnant women, non-pregnant women, it's saddening compared to the rest other regions in the world. So among preschool age children, reading from the table at the top, 67.6% of preschool children have anemia. And this translates to around 83.5 million infected children. And when you look at pregnant women, 57% of pregnant women have anemia. And this translates roughly to 72.2 million pregnant women. And in the soon-to-be or the future mothers, that's a non-pregnant women, 47.5% of this population is anemic, and this translates roughly to 70 million individuals or non-pregnant women living with anemia. And if you look at the map on my lower left of the screen, you can see that sub-Saharan Africa really has the bulk of the burden of anemia globally. And the reasons are multiple. As we all know, the causes of anemia are multiple, but really in the region, the determinants of anemia are mainly as a result of diet. We know that most diets are monotonous and plant-based with a lot of anti-nutrient factors such as phytates. And since most bioavailable iron is actually from animal source foods, this predisposes the populations to anemia. We also have a number of infectious diseases and also, for example, worms like hookworms that are still prevalent in some certain regions in the of sub-Saharan Africa. Malaria endemicity is also a challenge. This is also a subtropical zone that is still struggling with a lot of malaria. And then, as has already been highlighted by previous speakers, the genetic background of populations in sub-Saharan Africa sometimes predisposes us to higher prevalences of anemia. Our health systems, luckily, as Professor Julie has already said, are there, but they need serious strengthening to be able to cope with the prevalences of anemia as highlighted above. In addition to that, we have barriers to scaling up iron interventions. And notably, when you scale up, for example, iron supplementation in children, you are worried that you might cause more malaria based on evidence. And therefore, we noted during our search, our literature search, that various countries or various population groups are not being covered because of certain conflicting policies. In addition to that, we have this region experiencing a rapid population growth. And soon we are going to, the next couple of years, we're going to surpass a number of regions when it comes to the population as highlighted above. So we're going to be a region of about 3.1 billion people. And that means the problem of dealing with anemia is just going to be worse if we don't do anything now. So in our literature search, in our writing, in our analysis, we came up with 7 core key messages that need to go out urgently to call to action various stakeholders to intervene so that we can bring, control the challenge of iron deficiency anemia in the region of sub-Saharan Africa. The first message directed at pregnant women is really about adherence. And this is adherence to iron supplementation during pregnancy, which now we know, we have evidence that if there is proper adherence, this is likely to lead to substantial reduction in postpartum hemorrhage-induced maternal mortality and to increased birth weight of the newborns. We know that the mother-to-be generation in Africa, in sub-Saharan Africa, and especially pregnant women, currently go into pregnancy with inadequate stores. Yet this is compounded by the fact that they have low iron intake, as I already explained. And yet this is a period of pregnancy, is a period where there is high iron requirements. What we end up seeing is increased maternal mortality, postpartum hemorrhage, prematurity of the newborns, and a low birth weight of the newborns, thereby leading to them being unable to survive the first 1,000 days. And there is now mounting evidence that this also has an effect on the future brain development of the newborns. In later life, when the children are growing, there is now evidence that the diets are in terms of complementary foods are iron poor, and these children are also growing in environments with a lot of inflammation, and we now know that inflammation also causes iron absorption to be affected. This impacts on the growth of these children, and this seems to be a vicious cycle because over time this become adolescents, and the females go on to become pregnant, and the cycle is repeated, and it has to be arrested at some point. The second key message is also directed to pregnant women, but this time around, it's about the national programs in various countries in sub-Saharan Africa. These national programs for antenatal iron supplementation urgently need strengthening, and some of them actually need overhauling, and almost all of them require international financial and technical support if they are going to be able to improve delivery and create demand for their services. And this is the backdrop to this is that we now have seen that iron supplementation works. But how do you deliver iron supplements to pregnant women at the right time to all populations in such a vast region? Africa is huge, and governments are struggling to cope in terms of national programs. The other key message is directed to children. And these are two messages, message 3 and 4. The first one is actually in line with the World Health Organization recommendations that iron intervention should not be given to children in malaria endemic areas unless we give them in conjunction with measures to prevent malaria. And this is really to protect the children from, getting more sick from malaria and possibly even dying. Now, the new thing that we are calling for here is that when you give iron interventions to these children, this should be administered to individual recipients of iron interventions, rather than giving them in mass to the general public. And usually when governments or when national programs do this kind of interventions, it's very difficult to do, assess whether you have, malaria and also then treat. It's very difficult because of lack of resources, because of inadequate programs, challenges of reach. And therefore, we tend to see that populations or rather national programs tend to prioritize mass interventions. The other key message is on delayed cord clamping. There is now good evidence that cord clamping actually can prevent or delay the onset of iron deficiency anemia in late infancy when children are most susceptible. And therefore, we call for this to be scaled up, if not being scaled up, and standardized in most countries so that we have newborns benefiting from this. The other key message 5 is directed at adolescent girls and non-pregnant women. Sufficient iron stores should be attained before pregnancy or between pregnancies to prevent iron deficiency and anemia during pregnancy. But we noted that insufficient attention is given in research and policies to adolescent girls, perhaps on the grounds that iron deficiency anemia is relatively uncommon in this group. Now, if you look at the graph that I've put there, in terms of growth and vis-a-vis the human life cycle, iron is required in all stages of growth from infancy, child, adolescent, all the way to old age. But what you want is a prime adult who has the sufficient iron stores to go on to couple up and probably go on to have a child who is also going to grow into a young person, adolescent, who is capable of becoming another prime adult. We have to aim to be getting at and stays in our prime as far as iron supplementation is concerned. For adolescent girls, policies should be reviewed to give women of reproductive age, including adolescent girls, access to contraceptives with a specific aim of controlling menstrual bleeding and its associated anemia and to building iron stores. We noted that adolescent girls and access to contraceptives is a bit of an unrecognized intervention point. There are very few policies directed at this population, and hence the reason why we call for this focus to be redirected to adolescent girls and non-pregnant women. Finally, a general key message is that effective control of infections, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, is required to improve iron absorption and utilization and to make iron intervention safe and more efficacious. This is at the backdrop of the hepcidin evidence that has come in the recent years, but also with the mounting evidence that if you control hookworm infestations and other infections, then iron absorption is improved, and therefore, again, programs for effective control of infections should be scaled up. In summary, the first one is that adherence to iron supplementation in pregnancy leads to reductions in postpartum hemorrhage, hemorrhage-induced maternal mortality, and increased birth weight. Cord clamping, if we adhere to cord clamping, this will prevent or delay the onset of iron deficiency anemia in late infancy. Helminth control is a safe way to prevent iron loss in school-age children, aged 5 to 18 years old, and adults also. Effective control of infections is required to improve iron absorption and utilization and to make iron interventions safe and more efficacious. Now, the low coverage, lack of coordinated action, and the low priority currently given to antenatal iron supplementation in sub-Saharan Africa is simply unacceptable. And we need to have a mind shift. National programs need to be reorganized in how to tackle this problem of antenatal iron supplementation. probably new intervention, novel methods like IV iron, for example, need to be tested. Administering malaria preventive measures to individual recipients of iron interventions is ethically required in place of public malaria control measures that might not reach these individuals. Finally, policies should be reviewed with the aim of giving women of reproductive age, including adolescent girls, access to contraceptives with the specific purpose of controlling menstrual bleeding and its associated anemia. With that, I would like to thank everybody, especially the Lancet Hematology, for providing this platform and also for launching. And also I invite you to read a lot more information in the paper as is shown in that picture, where you will be able to understand, or rather to process more the points I have just highlighted. Thank you very much.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much, Professor Mwangi. So our next speaker today is Professor Amras Wonkan from the Department of Medicine, University of Cape Town, from South Africa. And he's going to tell us about transferable strategies for prevention and care of sickle cell disease. Please. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, I will try to share my screen. I think my screen should be shared now. Can someone confirm? Okay, thank you very much. It's really a pleasure and a privilege to share some of the work that we have done by doing this review. My gratitude to Julie to have lead it, and to AISA to have given the opportunity to us to doing this. Sickle cell disease originated in Africa about 7,000 years ago, at least, and it's a condition associated with resistance to malaria. But it gets recognized to modern medicine about only 111 years ago in American student. And since the discovery of sickle cell disease, many important landmark of research started with Louis Pauling that described the mutation, to the description of haplotype by Kehek-Kazesian, to the repartition global of haplotype suggesting multiple origin by my personal mentor, Stylianos Antonorakis. And I hope that we will contribute to this work in the many years to come of our career. This condition become extremely prevalent on the continent because of resistance to malaria, and of the nearly 300,000 new babies of sickle cell disease that are born in the world, about 80% are born on the African continent. And it's a condition associated to the mutation that distort the red blood cell, giving them a shape of a banana. And these red blood cells become rigid under the oxygenation and become crystallized. The reason why they will tend to obstruct red blood cell. These red blood cells, these banana cells, are also prone to destruction. They live very less than the normal red blood cell, and that will lead to anemia. So anemia, organ failure, susceptibility to infection are the main complication of sickle cell disease, and this can be summarized like this. So this patient will be subjected to major cardiovascular complication like stroke, much more than in the general population. This is an example of the image of stroke in a real patient with sickle cell disease. And in sickle cell disease, we can observe both hemorrhagic stroke on the left-hand side and also ischemic stroke, and described on the right-hand side of your screen. And these stroke event, unfortunately, jeopardize the progress of the child and their capacity to respond to executive function as measured, for example, in Cameroon, through evaluation of cognitive deficit that clearly become to be different between sickle cell disease patient and control from year 10. That means that interventions for care and prevention should happen much more earlier in life of these children. For all too recently, there was no definitive treatment for sickle cell disease. And most treatment at the moment, and it is the case in most African countries, as we have seen in the review, are based on pain, antibiotic transfusion, and rehydration. But we know that evolving treatment that unfortunately are not yet available in most African countries are based on anti-adhesion, augmentation of fetal hemoglobin, for example, using hydroxyurea, on bone marrow transplantation that are available in only a few African countries, actually through Nigeria and South Africa, and be developed at the moment in Tanzania, and gene editing and gene therapy that have become increasingly maybe the future of sickle cell disease cure. So we are proposing the review a few guidelines that are very flexible for sickle cell disease cure on the African continent. But this guideline will not be useful if we do not have enough specialized center of sickle cell disease care on the continent. And this slide that you will see in that paper describe the country that have a comprehensive care centers on the left-hand side. And you can see that most sub-Saharan African country will not have a comprehensive, specialized comprehensive care center for sickle cell disease. And only 2 actually have effective care center for stem cell transplantation. And Tanzania hopefully will be having their capacity of doing those transplantation recently. I must stress that the capacity of doing hematopoietic transplant will be an important capacity to implement gene editing or gene therapy for sickle cell disease. So we will need to improve this map in the years to come. So what we have left is screening strategy that can be at the neonatal level, and very few African countries do newborn screening. We can also extend it to genetic diagnostic before birth, but we know from our own work by implementing this technique in Cameroon about 15 years ago, and in Cape Town here about 10 years ago, that the uptake is conditioned by the difficulty faced by parents living with children with sickle cell disease. And the uptake, for example, in Nigeria and Cameroon is very high for genetic diagnostic before birth, but nearly zero here in Cape Town where I work because of optimal care provided to patients with sickle cell disease. We also know that the action, reproductive action associated with genetic diagnostic before birth pose an important ethical challenges as based on numerous work that we have on work done in Africa. Which means that one of the things that we want to focus our attention to is a measure that can allow secondary prevention of complication of sickle cell disease in addition to newborn screening. The implementation of newborn screening, penicillin prophylaxis, the use of hydroxyurea have dropped the mortality in children to nearly zero in America, but the mortality in adults have not changed over the past 40 years in America. So you can imagine that in Africa, we will have a worse situation because very few countries have implemented newborn screening, as we have shown in the map before. And that means that in many parts of the world, both Africa and all the other nations that have more resources, we have problem of solving both children mortality and adult mortality. Adult mortality in America, for example, will be due to chronic cardiovascular complications, as shown on this picture. And my presentation will be a little bit biased toward genetics. I'm, after all, a geneticist. And we try to convince the community that sickle cell disease will represent a best model to investigate both monogenic disease and complex threat. Because this is a disease that is monogenic, but it's also subjected to environmental factors, but also to other genetic variants that condition its severity. This may be probably the reason why the lethality of sickle cell disease is not 100%, even on African continent. Even without treatment, we know that the lethality will be around 80%, not 100%. Kidney dysfunction, for example, is subject to genetic variation, including for the study that we perform here on the African continent. And at least 3 or 4 variants will explain most of the highly associated kidney dysfunction in sickle cell disease. Some of the early study performed with our student Kutala show that there may be some variant that are associated with pain in sickle cell disease. And some other author study in America have shown that using a Bayesian model, you may be able, a mathematical model, to predict stroke using a combination of variant in multiple genes, and all, or using a peripheral transcriptomic to classify a patient as highly likely to die or not to die. But the most important modifier of sickle cell disease have been fetal hemoglobin, the level of fetal hemoglobin. This is a hemoglobin that is produced during our fetal life that normally become very low in adult life, near to zero. But patients that keep the capacity of keep producing fetal hemoglobin have a longer life expectancy. And this has been shown at least 40 years ago in the cooperative study in America. This is fetal hemoglobin is a quantitative trait that is inheritable, that is also subjected to genetic variation. Studied in Europe, in America, in Tanzania from Julie work, and in our own work in Cameroon, have shown that these variations are very much common in all sickle cell disease. And this knowledge have allowed to cure a patient or mice with sickle cell disease, an important transcriptional repressor of sickle cell disease. In other words, a gene that stops the production that repress the production of fetal hemoglobin. And when that discovery was done, everybody was very enthusiastic. Stop the expression of that gene BCL11, you're going to cure sickle cell disease. But it was not that simple, because experiments from nature illustrated in these children that naturally have a deletion of BCL11 shows that they actually have an increased level of fetal hemoglobin, but they also have some level of mental disability and some brain malformation, making BCL11 a quasi undruggable drug genes. Fortunately, the team of Stuart Hawkins in the West Coast in the United States, East Coast in the United States, in Boston specifically, have shown that there are some variation in the enhancer of BCL11, that is upstream of BCL11, that is specifically expressed and with some in the red blood cell. That means that if you modify those variations, you can modify the expression of BCL11 only in red blood cell. And by modifying, they clearly show using cell model that you increase the level of fetal hemoglobin, but only in red blood cell, which increase the prospect of using that variation for treatment of sickle cell disease. If I can summarize this in a layman term, BCL11 is a transcriptional repressor of fetal hemoglobin. Without BCL11 expression, you have an increased level of fetal hemoglobin. You will cure your child with sickle cell disease, but you will have some neurodevelopmental abnormality. But if you modify an enhancer that is upstream of BCL11, a controller of the controller, you will increase the level of fetal hemoglobin without other problem. And this will be the perfect approach to cure sickle cell disease. This is the way this year, a few reports on gene editing have been published for sickle cell disease, offering a lot of hope for many of the patients that we have on the African continent. We believe very strongly in a paper that we published a couple of days ago in Nature that the key for sickle cell disease therapy is within genomics, either by modifying fetal hemoglobin, modifying loci, or by using RNA therapy for treatment of sickle cell disease. One of those options, for example, may be exploring microRNA for treatment of sickle cell disease. Our own work have shown that microRNA was very important at the mechanism of hydroxyurea-induced fetal hemoglobin in treatment of sickle cell disease. And many other people's work, even recent work, have shown that this microRNA was very important for post-transcriptional modification of expression of fetal hemoglobin, which means that in the years to come, by investing sufficiently research on microRNA, we can imagine using a microfiber to package those microRNA and provide alternative treatment by injecting directly them in bone marrow. The advantage of this is that we will not be targeting only one gene, but a whole pathway of fetal hemoglobin expression. The development of vaccine for COVID-19.
Just to let you know that you're a bit over time already.
Okay, thank you. The development of vaccine for COVID-19 have given a possibility of also using a messenger mRNA for production of fetal hemoglobin or for a normal hemoglobin. But this is not the end of the story. We believe that in Africa, we will be able to find other low target for fetal hemoglobin if we use the appropriate GeoWise array to explore it, for example, using the one developed by AfSHG Africa, and to respond to the need of the patient that are requesting. There are other questions that we have raised in that paper. For example, the evolutionary dynamic of sickle cell disease. We know that this condition has been in Africa for a very long time. Possibly Tutankhamun had sickle cell disease. That means that the pressure of the mutation on our own genome have been very high. It is possible that some variant have been selected in our genome because of the condition itself. This is a proof from an analysis that was performed by Professor Emile Chimusa that identified a few variants, possibly due to the pressure of selection on sickle cell disease on our genome. This is the work that we published this year, and also in that paper you will see this chart that shows that most of those, the non-variant under selection, actually are expressed with sickle cell mutation in many patients. So we still need to have a lot of work to know what is the impact of this variant to designing a genetic risk model for sickle cell disease. And lastly, it is still important we keep investigating the origin of the mutation and how the mutation spread around the world and at what time and for what reason. So hopefully we have now a good network for research on the continent, starting with Sickle in Africa Consortium between SADC and SPARCO, Sickle Gen Africa under the leadership of Solomon, the Sickle Cell Disease Ontology that was started by Nikki Mulder, and the Sickle Pan-African Network that will be the umbrella under all these organizations. It's the time for me to thank our colleague from that for their support, to thank all the people that have participated in this meeting, from the attendees from many countries to the funders, and also to Lancet Hematology and other journals supporting this meeting. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Dr. Yvonne Day Adomako from the Department of Hematology, University of Ghana Medical School, Accra, Ghana. Dr. Day Adomako will tell us about the challenges and opportunities for safer blood supply in sub-Saharan Africa.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to present a very important topic, Safe Blood in Sub-Saharan Africa, our challenges and opportunities. This is my disclosure, outline of my presentation. Low availability of safe blood for transfusion still remains a major challenge in sub-Saharan Africa. We have challenges maintaining sufficient, high quality, safe supplies of blood and blood components. Now, we know that blood supplies need to be constantly replenished. There's increased clinical demand for blood and blood products generally. Generally, high-income countries are able to meet the demand for blood and blood products, whereas in sub-Saharan Africa, we are still lagging behind. Now, transfusion of safe blood and blood products, we know, saves millions of lives worldwide. Therefore, we do need an optimal population of adequate voluntary blood donors. Not just recruit them, but also be able to retain these blood donors in the blood donor pool. Blood safety remains a major challenge in the sub-region. And there are several reasons why it remains a major concern for us. A few are due to resource constraints, the high prevalence of transfusion transmissible infections, persistent reliance on family replacement donors. Now, these difficulties have led to chronically insufficient safe blood supply in many countries in the sub-region. Now, what are some of our challenges to safe blood supply? There are several challenges. We've highlighted a few. What education are we actually giving to the public concerning blood transfusion? Demystifying some of the myths surrounding blood transfusion. Is this education sustained? What media platforms are we using to get the message out there to the public? So this is an area that is lacking in sub-Saharan Africa and should be addressed. Now, the opportunities that exist for us are numerous, but we have highlighted a few, and that is transforming the family replacement donor system to a voluntary blood donor system. We need culturally appropriate interventions. Now, some have been implemented in some countries and have helped in the blood donor pool and to retain some of their voluntary blood donors. So interventions like the planned annual calendar for blood donation education and mobilization, the peer recruitment programs like the Pledge 25 Club, and there are other suggested interventions such as motivational incentives, sending reminders, and mass media adverts, and so on. We need to be able to boost, blood donation among women. How do we do that? Targeted interventions, addressing their fears, having a sustained and planned educational program for them, demystifying some of the myths surrounding women donating blood. And these can be done through a lot of, like social media platforms as well. Reducing rates of donor deferral due to anemia will certainly help a lot, and we will be able to retain a lot of our blood donors. Now, what kind of education are we giving them as well? Nutritional education will certainly help. This can be done through mass media, mobile phones, and so on. Giving iron supplementation after each blood donation. These are some of the interventions that have been tried and tested in some parts of the world. Increasing the blood donation intervals is also a suggested approach to reduce donor deferral due to anemia. We also need to address knowledge and communication gaps. We know that a lot of communication interventions are being explored now. Partnerships between blood banks and radio stations, for instance, has been tried and tested in Ghana, and it has helped a lot using mobile phone technology and a whole lot more. So these are all some of the opportunities that we have to improve our blood donor pool. Our key messages are that transfusion transmissible infections, especially malaria, are prevalent among blood donors. The family replacement donor system is predominant. There's a substantial proportion of blood donors in sub-Saharan African countries who are still being deferred due to anemia. Women are underrepresented in the blood donor pool. Poor knowledge and communication regarding blood donation. Financial constraints also hamper the supply and maintenance of our national blood services. These are a few of our recommendations to develop and adhere to national policies on blood donor selection, to include malaria screening in our national transfusion service programs, especially during the malaria seasons, and also to complement the national efforts in hepatitis B vaccination. We need to improve donor care. It's most of the time neglected through regular assessment of iron stores, follow-up telephone calls. We need to generally encourage our donors so that they would come back and donate and remain in the donor pool. Communication or inadequate knowledge about blood donation. So in conclusion, WHO through their Global Blood Safety Initiative encourages the principle of voluntary unpaid donations. The current systems of blood donation with very few voluntary blood donors in sub-Saharan Africa are unable to sustain our transfusion requirements. We now have greater health coverage, better access to health care. There's increase generally in demand for blood products. We need investments in screening. What screening methods are we using? Are we engaged in any quality assurance, external quality assurance programs? How well are we performing in these programs? We need specialist hematology services in our national blood banks and in sub-Saharan Africa. They can help with our limited research capacity and also care for our donors and the general population. There's therefore the urgent need to design, implement, and evaluate innovative communication approaches to help communication and strengthen innovative communication approaches to help strengthen sub-Saharan Africa blood transfusion services. And this can be done through social media. There are so many social media platforms now. The mass media, transfusion research is limited in the sub-region. It's time to do a lot of research concerning safety and availability of blood in the sub-region. Misconceptions such as religious and cultural specific must be adequately and tactfully addressed. Lastly, public-private partner services, and the blood safety. Thank you. I'd like to acknowledge all my co-authors, Dr. Lucy Asamoah Kouakou of the National Blood Service, Ghana, Dr. Bernard Appiah, Syracuse University, Professor Alfred Yolson, and Professor Olayemi, both of the University of Ghana Medical School. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Yvonne, for your presentation. So before we start the Q and answer session, we're going to have now the presentation of Professor Jackson Oren, which is on hematological malignancies. Unfortunately, due to unforeseen circumstances, he's not with us today. Therefore, I thought I'll just share with you all the hub of the series, which is now live at thelancet.com, and then we can proceed to the Q&A. So let me just see if I can share my screen to show you how the series looks like on the web. There we go. Now, that's perfect. So yeah, just wanted to briefly take viewers through the series tab. So as I said, you can go now to thelancet.com/series, Hematology Africa. You'll see there a small executive summary summarizing the goals of the series and the main aims that Julie told us about earlier today. There is also an editorial that I have written on behalf of the team, putting the series a bit more in content of other initiatives that the Lancet have done before in the region and the SDGs and the African Union agenda. So you can have a look at that editorial. And then there is Julie's fantastic comment with Grace Moshi that she told us about earlier today. Then there is also a little piece that I would like to highlight because at the end we are doing this because we care about patients. And we got the opportunity to publish along with the series this little in focus piece by several patients who collaborate with the Sickle in Africa initiative. And they tell us a bit about their experiences of what it's like to get care when you have sickle cell disease in the different African countries they live. So we have patients from 4 or 5 different countries there, but they all found commonalities to tell us. So I think it's a very inspiring piece, and I will encourage you all to read that. And finally, you can see the 4 papers of this series. So we just heard from Yvonne on blood transfusion. We also heard about Martin's paper on iron deficiency anemia. And also we have the presentation from Professor Wonkam Ambrose work on cell disease. As I said, Jackson Oren and his team, Professor Jackson Oren and his team, unfortunately could not present today in the end, but there is his paper, and I would encourage you to read it. All this content is free to access, so please, I'll encourage you to visit the hub and engage with the content. And with this, I would we can proceed now, I think, to the Q&A. I'll stop sharing the screen now. So, great, thank you so much. Julie, Ambras, Martin, I can see you. Yvonne, I can see you there as well. Thank you all for taking part in this session. Thank you so much for all your contributions. So let's see, there are quite a few questions. And let's start perhaps with a question on something that is part of hematology, is very novel. The series touch on it a little bit, some of the papers, and this is about gene therapy. So Gaston Matandou asked for Julie, but I guess, Ambras, you can also put your thoughts about this there, since your paper is about sickle cell disease. And he says, when I hear about gene therapy, I always think about its cost involved. So considering the cost, how can gene therapy be made readily available in Africa? The burden of disease in Africa can be used as an argument, perhaps, to say the cost will be shared among affected people, but still these people are generally poor and several African governments are not involved, do not care. So how to deal with the cost? Challenging question to start.
It's good for Juliet.
Absolutely. So we've been looking at that, Gaston, really, and just for people to know, Gaston is a fantastic statistician and bioinformatics, working in SADC with Ambrose and Emil Chimusa. So it's been fantastic working with Gaston. So one of the things that we've been doing, and the picture that I showed with Grace and I at the meeting with Elian Gluckman and others, is really trying to make sure that we address the issue of equity. Just as a context, bone marrow transplant in the US or in the UK cost is around, this is bone marrow transplant, this is around $100,000 to $150,000. If you do it in India, some of the centers in India, it's around $60,000. We have done the numbers and we are confident, and there already is transplant that's ongoing by Nozi Bazwai in Nigeria. And there's a recent editorial that Lucho has written, in that we believe that we could do transplants in Africa at a cost of between $30,000 to $50,000. So that's the first thing. And as mentioned by Ambrose and myself, is that transplant is essentially the platform for ex vivo gene therapy. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that governments are engaged. All the governments, if you go to Ghana, Nigeria, Tanzania, you will find extensive investment in tertiary level centers. You will see hospitals by the public sector, by the private sector, that have been invested and can do transplants and are able to do transplants. One of the critical stumbling blocks for transplantation is blood transfusion. And you've heard from Yvonne the fantastic work that they're doing. Blood transfusion has been one of the limiting factors in terms of being able to provide safe bone marrow transplantation. So that's something that we do. The context of comparison with gene therapy, when you think about gene therapy, I mentioned transplant is $100,000 per transplant, $1.2 million. An initiative called the Global Gene Therapy Initiative. This is an initiative that is open for anybody to be a part of, and we'd really welcome you to be a part of. It was founded by Dr. Sisi Kitio from the Joint Clinical Research Center in Uganda, and Jennifer Day from Fred Hutch in the US. And it has it's open. It's open to everyone. We meet every Thursday, and we talk about issues around the whole thing about equity and access. So with Caring Crops, which is one of the NGOs that was started by Boro, we are hoping to have a manufacturing plant in Uganda and another one in India that will be able to manufacture the vectors, the product, so that when we get the stem cells from patients, rather than send the stem cells, and this is work that Mohammed Zahir is doing, looking at CD34, looking at how we can collect them either from cord blood or from peripheral blood, and then process them so that we can send them to a processing center as close to the patient as possible so that they can manipulate, do the transaction, and then we get them the product back and transfuse it to the patient. So this is something that through Caring Cross GGTI, we're looking at the first center that seems to be ready and is working to be ready will be in Uganda. Once the most expensive thing, and this is where there's a lot of discussion, the most expensive thing is the vector when it comes to gene therapy. And if we're able to get around the vector and the cost of the vector, then it will be available. The final thing that I should mention, I think, when we were in Ethiopia for the last H3 Africa meeting, the NIH and the World Cup, the NIH and the Gates Foundation announced an investment of $200 million US to gene-based therapy for sickle cell disease and HIV in Africa. So that investment, the bulk of that investment has gone into centers outside of Africa. The interesting and the exciting thing about that investment is that they are looking, and we hope that in the next iteration of this, that African investigators will be involved. But what we're doing is that we're looking to see if we can do in vivo gene editing. This is something that would really mean that rather than go through the process of myeloablation that is required for ex vivo gene therapy, when you do in vivo gene therapy, you don't need to have that process. And so that is a technology. It's not there yet, but there's a lot of very, very exciting work that's ongoing. Final thing that I want to say to answer your question, Gaston, and expand on it a little bit, this is where I think we are, and the opportunity that H3 Africa, Tanzania Society of Human Genetics, and African Society of Human Genetics is very well positioned, is with regards to understanding the genetic factors that influence erythropoiesis and influence the immune system when it comes to handling both the vector and the immune reconstitution that comes on after transplantation, as well as after that. There's been safety concerns, before anybody asks, there's been safety concerns about gene therapy, and this is something that is being taken very, very seriously. Charmaine is here, and she may want to talk about that, taken very, very seriously, and this is why we're very lucky that we're working so closely with our patient community. The plan is that with the genomic capacity that we've developed, we'll be able to answer the questions about erythropoiesis, about immune reconstitution, about immune system in response to either the vector or the process itself. And so we're very excited that we will be part of the process. There's a lot of discussion, a lot of support, and the cost issue is something that our governments are very much engaged, and it's something that we'll be doing. Gaston, if we do not transplant patients in Africa, they will leave and get transplants there. And we've got experience from Uganda, fantastic work again that's been done by Dr. Francis, Dr. Sixi, and others, where they've shown with the cohorts of patients who've gone and received transplants outside of Ghana, what the survival outcome is. So there's a lot of lesson and a lot of capacity here. I'll stop there. I could talk forever, but thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Julie. Thank you so much for your elaborate answer. Next, perhaps we can focus on a question to Martin. Someone was asking anonymously whether gender is a risk factor for iron deficiency anemia, and what do we know about that?
Thanks, Isa. Thanks to the anonymous question. It's a really great question. Yes, I would say gender is a risk factor to iron deficiency anemia, and it's in the life cycle of our females especially. We noted that when a child or a young lady becomes an adolescent, from that point on, when they start their menses, there is heavy bleeding, which in Africa, unfortunately, maybe because of various factors like culture and the like, we have not paid very close attention to that population group. And what you see is that that's the first point when they start becoming anemic because of the heavy bleeding. In the developed world, what you see is that there is access to contraceptives, for example, and to services where these young ladies can be guided into what to do, especially if they're having heavy bleeding, to counteract the iron loss. So that is also coupled with now the increased rate in most countries. And therefore, 15, 16, even sometimes about 18, majority of countries in sub-Saharan Africa are struggling with a lot of teenage pregnancies, a lot of young. The time of first pregnancy is very early in most of these countries. And then, as I explained in my presentation, that kickstarts a vicious cycle of going into pregnancy iron stores, and that keeps getting repeated and repeated over and over again. Now, the young men are not experiencing that. While the young ladies are going through this, the young men are not experiencing this. Instead, they are in a period of rapid growth, but largely not unless they bleed or cut themselves, maybe rough spots or something. They don't have these same iron demands that women have during their monthly cycles, but also during the heavy demands of iron during the pregnancy period. That is the reason why I would conclude that, yes, there is a gender risk factor when you are talking about iron deficiency.
Okay, thank you for your answer, Martin. So thank you. So we are a little bit over time, but I would like to ask a question to each presenter if possible. So just run a little bit over. So the next one would be for Professor Wonkam. How prevalent is sickle cell disease in North Africa? And are sickle cell risk alleles selected for at mixed people with African ancestry?
Sickle cell is relatively common, but not as common as, for example, in Tanzania, Congo, or Nigeria. For example, in Nigeria, the frequency in the general population may be up to 25% or in Congo. But in North Africa, we expect it to be around 10% in tribal area, but much lower, for example, in urban area.
Thank you.
Is there a mixed population selects for them? The answer is that we do not have any evidence for that. What we could say is that sickle cell disease is present in the southern part of Italy, is present in Greece. Actually, the first community screening for sickle cell started in Greece some years ago. The question that is from evolutionary perspective and migration perspective is when does sickle cell disease arrive in southern part of Europe? So that might be very interesting. What we do know is that in that part of Europe, for example, the most common haplotype is the Benin haplotype. We tend to suggest that the migration and a mixture with European in that part of Europe is very recent. When I say relatively recent, probably 5,000 years ago, but it's something that we still need to investigate.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And lastly, I would like to ask Yvonne, Judith Kumutini is asking, how much blood are we talking about to fill the gaps that are seen in the region? And is importing blood from elsewhere an option?
Well, thank you very much for that question. If I got it right, how much blood are we talking about? Well, WHO advocates for 100% voluntary blood donations, and so that is what we are aiming for. We are hoping that strategies when putting strategies, some are being done by the Blood Safe Project, which is being sponsored by NHLBI. And this is supposed to find strategies to improve blood donation in the sub-region. So 3 countries are involved, and they are coming up with very innovative strategies, including using communication strategies like WhatsApp messaging, docudramas, iron supplementation, which has been done in other countries and not in Africa yet. So we are using interventions that we think will help with our blood donor pool. So definitely, yes, 100% voluntary blood donor pool. And maintaining them, retaining these donors, I think that is the most important thing. You can have 100%, but at the end of the day, if you don't retain a lot of them, you haven't really done much. So we need to have them and be able to retain them for use. Yeah. And the second question, was there a second?
Yeah, there was a follow-up to that, saying whether blood should be imported to fill those gaps.
I think that if we're able to come up with all these interventions, and if these interventions help, definitely we would want to use our own. So getting blood from somewhere else, I don't think that should be considered as an option. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and in your paper, you lay out how important it is to strengthen blood transfusion services. Yeah. Okay, so I think there are a few more questions still, and some coming up in the chat, but we are 6 minutes over. So in the interest of time, I would like to finish the session now because the conference is still going and there are sessions later on that people have to join. So I would like to thank very much all presenters today for being here, also for your dedication to this project, and thank you so much also to all the viewers who join us today. And with this, I would like to finish the session. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So thank you very much, guys, and thank you, everyone. So we'll just go back to Professor Christian Happy, who's chairing this this session, so that we can close we can have the break. Professor Happy, is he there?
Yeah, I'm here. Very, very interesting presentation, very impressive presentations, generally, Julie and Ambrose and all of the presenters. I think you made us all proud, you know, because I remember a few years ago when we heard about this kind of talk and the science, we used to hear other people tell us about sickle cell in Africa. But today we are telling our stories ourselves, and then you are, and I can just be so proud. And you know, I was telling my little son a few days ago that I think, you know, when you grow up, go and do medicine and get inspired by Ambrose. Ambrose, actually, he was looking at you. I was giving a talk and you showed up, and I said, look, that's your father. Be like him, because I really got impressed. And Julie and AP orders, I think you really making us proud, and I can't stop saying this because anytime I hear and I listen to you, I know there is hope for this continent. You know, things are changing, and then I'm thanking all of you for taking the lead. We've gotten to a point now whereby, you know, I'm sure there is a lot of excitement out there. And at least I'm sure that a lot of the young people listening to you and listening to all this talk, and you could hear the questions coming from the public and from the audience, and you handle them so well. So I do think that, you know, at this moment, we are getting to a stage where when we look at the curriculum, I'm just making sure that I think we need to have, I just want to thank all of you. And then also Yaisa for moderating this session, you know, was really fantastic and so powerful. And with the synergy that we see now between the Lancet and then this group, I think that you're really going to be serving as a platform for advocacy, and then to have our voice heard and then louder than what Julia and Ambrose that are leading this team are providing out there. So I think really I want to thank everybody for this session, and I want to just create the indulgence of people. You know, we went a bit over, but we just want to, I mean, it was because of the excitement that we went over. And really, I want to thank everybody. It was such a great session. So at this point, we will have to kind of close here at this moment. Is that correct, Julie? I'm just trying to,
Yeah.
We
have 20 minutes to the next session.
Yes, we will close here, and then we will have to revert after 20 minutes. And then I really want all of us to really applaud and then and clap for this fantastic team of presenter. I think starting this session with in great point here. I'm sure this meeting eventually is going to be something else. And thank the great presenters, and then thank Julia, and then thank all organizers for making this happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christine.